the college football national championship. Last night, the Ohio State Buckeyes, they beat the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And this was a game that had a lot of hype surrounding it. I mean, it was a ticket price level that was almost like the Super Bowl. I looked before the game, the cheapest get-in price before the game was $4,700. A couple days before that was $2,500. And it was a battle of two of the most iconic programs in the sport. You got the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, you got the Ohio State Buckeyes. Ohio State, an 8.5-point favorite, went up to 9 before the game, and it looked like Ohio State was going to run them off the field. Like they were going to boat race Notre Dame, and it was going to be like the Notre Dame teams we saw in the past, ones that, okay, maybe you get to a national championship game, but you're going to get outclassed. You're going to be overmatched, like we saw with Alabama back in 2012. Not this Fighting Irish team. The Buckeyes up 31-7 early. The Notre Dame team that comes out with that first drive, longest drive in CFP history, 15-play drive. You take almost 9 minutes, and they basically tried to turn Riley Leonard into prime Tim Tebow. And it looked like, is it going to be Notre Dame that prevails? But ultimately, Notre Dame pulls within 8. And Ohio State fans just say, oh no, it's Ryan Day. Ryan Day is going to do what he does, go up big in a CFP game and then blow this lead. And then the narrative for Ohio State was just going to be, oh, it's the $20 million team that choked. It would have gone down as one of the biggest choke jobs in the history of the college football national championship game. But what always happens in this game is the team with the most talent wins. The team with the NFL guys win. And it came down to Jeremiah Smith, the Ohio State Buckeyes superstar freshman. It's 3rd and 11. Notre Dame is in a position where if you get that stop, they get the ball back with a chance to tie it. They go all out blitz, and they send Jeremiah Smith on a go route, and he makes the play, 56-yard reception that pretty much iced the game for the Buckeyes.
They're moving. Here they come.
Heavy pressure, Howard delivers downfield, and Smith, he's got it! Jeremiah Smith!
So you see that right there. I mean, that is just a dude who's 19 that looks like a physical freak. 6'3", 230 pounds. He's looking like the modern day version of Julio Jones out there. But my question is, the respect that you have to have for your cornerbacks to think that he has a chance against Jeremiah Smith in that situation when it's 3rd and 11. All you need to do is a stop. And by the way, it was a great block there by Travion Henderson to give Will Howard the time to make that throw. But Jeremiah Smith is going to beat your best guy. He said earlier in the week that if you played man-to-man against us, we're going to put on a show, and the show was put on. So I want to ask John real quick. The question now is this the most impressive run that we've ever seen from a college football team in the history of this sport? Well, after the game, Ryan Day talked about the Buckeyes' big win, the national championship game. I'm going to tell you why this is the most impressive run that we've ever seen by any team in college football. But here's Ryan Day on getting that big dub against Notre Dame and really silencing those haters.
See guys overcome things, learn life lessons, and then reach their dreams. This is what happened tonight. Just sticking together, having each other's back. Faith is huge with these guys. And we built the foundation early in the season that we knew we were going to have to withstand some storms along the way. We did. We stuck together. We hung in there like a family does when things get hard. And we came out the back end. And now this just gives so much credibility to what these guys did all season. I'm so proud of them. Yeah, they're my motivation. My family at home, my wife and kids, and then these guys. That's why I get up in the morning every day. It's just to try to make sure these guys reach their dreams and goals. That's all it comes down to. And then also just show as an example, when things get hard in life, you just keep swinging as hard as you can, you fight. That's our culture.
National champions, baby! Come on, man!
He's fired up, and that Buckeyes team is fired up. Now, the question is this the best run we've ever seen from any team in the history of college football? Now, I will preface this by saying, with all due respect to that 2019 LSU team, I'll never forget Joe Burrow smoking that cigar with the swag, and that LSU team, they were absolutely unstoppable. You beat Florida, you beat Auburn, you beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa, Georgia, Oklahoma, and a really good Clemson team. But I think for me, this Ohio State's team that beat 4 elite teams consecutively when they reach an all-time low in losing to Michigan, makes this the most impressive run that we've ever seen. Let's not forget, it was November 30th when Ohio State lost to a Michigan team that they were 21 point favorites to, and they lost that Michigan team. And after that game, they wanted to fire Ryan Day. And Ryan Day looked like a guy that was at least on the hot seat, probably fighting for his job against Tennessee in the CFP. And then what happens? What happens in that one? You dominate Tennessee. Then you go to the Rose Bowl and you beat Oregon and you're up 34-0. You're up 34-0 at one point now before they get a quick score to start before the half, and then they get a touchdown to start the second half, and then you beat Texas in Texas, and then you beat Notre Dame. So you look at this run of the final CFP rankings. Ohio State beat 6 of the 7 teams that were at the end. Outside of Georgia, you beat all the teams that were basically relevant in that playoff. All the teams that were going to compete for the national championship. And you go past that. During the college football playoff, Ohio State, they led 193 of 240 minutes. They only trailed in the CFP for a grand total of 6 minutes. And during the regular season, they trailed for 81 minutes out of 960. They beat four top 10 AP teams. Oregon was number 1. They beat Texas, Tennessee, and Notre Dame. In the new era of college football, this run that Ohio State went on is going to be the run that all future teams are going to be judged on. And I think that what Ohio State did to kind of silence the critics, and you look at the narrative, oh, they spent $20 million on their team. A lot of that was just to retain talent. That was to retain 8 of their 11 starters on defense. Yes, you went out there and you brought in Caleb Downs, who probably is the best defensive player in college football, the Alabama transfer. You brought in Will Howard, Big 12 player of the year. He was massive. He was the MVP last night. Yes, you bring in Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss. But the narrative that Ohio State bought their championship is ridiculous because Ohio State didn't spend the most. There were 2 teams that spent more than Ohio State last year on their roster. Who were those 2 teams? It was Oregon and it was Texas. 2 teams that Ohio State beat in consecutive rounds. Ohio State was 3rd with 20 million, but who's right behind Ohio State? LSU. They spent $20.1 million on their team. Behind them, Georgia. Who came at number 6? Texas A&M spent $17.2 million on their team. Michigan, who beat Ohio State, but ended up with a bad season, spent $16.3 million on your team. So I think what we know now in the modern age of college football is if you want to contend, you got to spend, but it does not mean you're guaranteed to win a championship. So I think that is the beauty of all this if you're Ohio State. Now, next thing I want to talk about, though, is Jeremiah Smith. And Jeremiah Smith is one of the best college football players we've seen in the last 10 to 15 years. This is someone who could play in the NFL today. If he was draft eligible, he would be a top 3 to 5 pick at worst. And he's the guy that came up big. We looked at the highlight. 3rd and 11, 56-yard catch to seal it. He had 5 catches for 88 yards and a touchdown. And his season, 76 catches for 1,315 yards, 15 touchdowns. 15 touchdowns. And after the game, he kind of caught himself a little bit when he was asked how many more championships he wants to win at Ohio State. Here's what Jeremiah Smith said after the game. Said, I'm trying to get 3 more. Oh, no, 2 more, because he knows that after 2, he'll be able to go to the draft. There's no chance that he'll be there for a 4th year. There's a better chance that I win the Heisman Trophy for UCLA than Jeremiah Smith playing 4 years in college. But the question is, should he be eligible to go to the draft? Now, of course, players, if you don't know, have to be 3 years removed from high school to be eligible for the NFL draft. And for someone like Jeremiah Smith, 19 years old, he still has to play 2 more years in college before he can be drafted. And you look at the success he's had this season, and you compare that to other receivers in this upcoming draft, there's no doubt about it. He would be the very first receiver taken in the draft. If you look at the mocks around, you got Arizona's McMillan. He's supposed to be one of the top picks, right, for receivers and overall. He had 1,319 yards his junior season. He had 8 touchdowns. He has 26 touchdowns in his career. Jeremiah Smith had 16 in his first year with Ohio State. The production is certainly there, and the talent is there too. He'd be the best receiver in the 2025 class. He's going to be the best receiver in the 2026 class. He would be the best receiver in the 2027 class. And I think that there needs to be some either blue ribbon panel, or there needs to be a draft consensus where if a guy is a top 5 pick, if it's agreed upon that he would go top 5, he should have the ability to go. What does a top 5 pick get? You're looking at a 4-year deal with over $30 million, right? Jeremiah Smith with NIL, he'll get $2, $4, $5 million, something in that range. But we're talking about someone that could easily get $30+ million and be a top pick in the NFL draft. It's not for every player, right? Not a lot of freshmen are going to be consensus top 5 picks, but I just think at some point, you got to let these guys go out there and throw their name in the hat if it looks like they could be drafted as high as he is. But, John, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, Jeremiah Smith, you know how talented he is, but is it a situation where it's not just how much of a physical freak he looks like? It's almost like, okay, is he mature enough to take on the NFL? But do you think he should be allowed to go to the NFL draft after just 1 year in college?
I mean, physically, I think his body would be ready to play in the NFL. I got 2 other guys, Leonard Fournette and Jabril Peppers. When they came out of high school, I thought they could probably play in the NFL immediately just based off where they were physically. I think the maturity part is where it's the bit of the delay. I think people don't realize how much faster the game is mentally when you get from the college level to the pro level. I also think it's just important although he has a really freakish body, I do think 2 more years in that Ohio State BIA level weight training facility is going to be great in preparing him for the league. And let's be honest, Doug, who wants to leave the Brian Hartline School of Wide Receiver early? You know, it's the best coach in the country at producing at the position. And by the time he gets to his junior year, I mean, he'll be the first player selected in his class. I mean, his specs at everything: hands, athleticism, ability to catch radius. I mean, it's all there. He has every tool to be, I mean, a Hall of Famer at the position. I don't want to put these huge expectations for him, but I mean, I thought Marvin Harrison was as good as a prospect as you're going to see coming out of the university. And Jeremiah Smith is by far a better prospect at this stage coming out than Marvin was.
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. And I love your point about Brian Hartline, Ohio State's wide receiver coach, who's developed these guys, the Marvin Harrison Jr.'s, the Chris Olaves, the Jackson Smith and Jigbas. The list goes on and on. It's kind of a debate. Who is wide receiver you, LSU or Ohio State? If Jeremiah Smith career pans out like it could, I think that will give them the Justin Jefferson, that type of player, that caliber of player. But look, I mean, as a fan of college football, someone who loves college football, I want to see Jeremiah Smith win a Heisman for Ohio State. That'd be pretty cool. But if I'm these guys, I'm like, man, he looks like an NFL guy that's playing against high schoolers at this level right now. And hey, Ohio State fans, there's a reason why, if you go back and watch a press conference when Ryan Day found out they had signed Jeremiah Smith and that he actually signed his national letter of intent, he was about to pass out at the podium because Miami came in late. Some big NIL money said, I'm going to go to Ohio State. Now, next thing I do want to talk about, though, is just the college football playoff as a whole, because the college football landscape for so many years was just a mythical title, right? You had the BCS, or was a formula that paired together the top 2 teams and then expanded to 4 teams, which there was always that 5th team. Look at Florida State last year. Florida State, they thought they should be in. They weren't. There was always that team that couldn't get in. This year, it was the first 12-team playoff. And I think now we can legitimately say that you are crowning a legitimate national champion in college football at this point, because there's no doubt at this point. Because the truth is, in college football, there's about 8 teams, maybe max, that have the talent to win it. I mean, college basketball, number 8 seed Villanova, they won it in the 80s, and there's been some lower seeds that have made the Final Four. But football is very different. The team with the most NFL stars, the team with the most 5-star recruits, usually is the team that wins. I mean, Alabama won 6 titles, and you saw how much success they had. But I think with the college football playoff, why it was such a massive success is that you don't have all those forgettable bowl games, and you have playoff games at college football home stadiums. I think that was incredible. The environments that we saw at Notre Dame in South Bend, at Penn State, at Ohio State. It was really cool to see that environment in December. And then the quarterfinals. Yes, there were some blowouts, but I don't think anyone is waking up today and saying, man, is Ohio State really the best team in college football? Look, there's Michigan fans that are saying, oh, you couldn't beat Michigan and all that stuff, right? But the truth is, I think we know now that the best team gets crowned in college football year in and year out. And I think if I was going to make any changes, I always want to change stuff. I was going to change anything about the college football playoff. I think that one, I would change it where the top 4 teams that get the buys aren't the conference champions. You just make the top 4 teams in the country are the ones that get the buys. And if Notre Dame is one of those teams, then so be it. And yes, you're probably going to get the SEC and the Big Ten are going to make up a lot of those top 4 teams with the big conference realignments. But that'd be number 1 for me. I would also reseed. I would definitely reseed. I think reseeding is the only big change that I would make. Other than that, it's about as close to a perfect championship format as college football has ever had. And I think the last thing I would do, though, find a way to move the championship to January 20th. I think that just felt a little weird to me. I mean, NFL playoffs is in full swing. You got baseball, spring training almost around the corner. I think if you can get as close to January 1st and have the Rose Bowl be right at the top, that would be the best case scenario. But that was a little much for me. I think it's a little too pushed back into January.
I saw somebody say, I think it was, I'm going to say it was either Kirk Herbstreit or Joel Klatt, or it might have been Paul Feinbaum, who mentioned potentially putting the Army-Navy game to start the season.
I saw that, yeah.
At the week 0 game, which I think is great. And then I think you don't know. I think the season just ends too late into the year. Like, where does the student athletes really get a break in between? Because most of my college athletes know, especially who play football, is, I mean, you go to spring ball right in about March, you know? So, like, it's such a quick turnaround. I don't think people realize how much that is on the body. So I do think they need to push that schedule a bit back. For sure. They absolutely do. I think that, yes, you're seeing more games, and that's great. But, hey, we're talking about the rivalries, right? The big thing for Ohio State fans is there an asterisk because you didn't beat Michigan? Last time I checked, there were 51 teams that beat Michigan. I mean, give or so, as far as just players staying there. They've won 9 national championships, right? I mean, the national championship still is the gold standard and a way to measure success.